Welcome to the City Current Show, powered by Higginbotham Insurance and Financial Services.
This show focuses on sharing good news and powering the good in our community. Now here's your host, City Current CEO, Jeremy Park.
Welcome to the City Current Show, powered by Higginbotham. I'm your host, Jeremy Park. We're always honored to bring you inspiring stories of individuals and organizations making a difference, empowering the good. And we love talking about how adventures and experiences can transform your life and your urgency to live with purpose. That's why we're honored to have with us Joe Huff and Bridget Hilton. They're the authors of Experiential Billionaire, Build a Life Rich in Experiences and Die with No Regrets. We'll talk all about the book, all about the adventures, but Bridget and Joe, how are you two doing?
Good. How are you? We're happy to be here today. Excited.
Yeah, doing great. Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. So you two have some amazing adventures, and we will give people a little bit of a snapshot because, when you talk about all the things you've done, hard to squeeze that into 15 minutes, but we'll talk about the book, talk about the adventures, but let's start with how did you two meet? So Joe, give us some background on how you two got together.
Sure. My background, I started off, I barely graduated high school and I didn't really have a lot of prospects, I would say. But fortunately and unfortunately, my father went through a near-death experience right at that same time, right as I was turning 18 years old. And that gave me this gift of urgency that just changed the trajectory of my life. Instead of just kind of sitting by and letting things happen to me, I decided to actually try to figure out what I wanted to do with my life and how to do that. And that led to me achieving a bunch of goals that I had set for myself that I probably would have never done. But among them was I moved away from everyone I grew up with, which turned out to be a great decision in my particular case. And the next thing was I actually was fortunate enough to start a company. A friend of mine asked me if I would start a business with them. And that's a gross glorification of what we did. We actually got two people, he and I, in a garage, and we started a t-shirt company. But that grew and morphed into a successful business over a decade of time. A lot to do with like the same kind of sense of urgency and chasing, life experiences. And after about a decade of that, I realized that I had this financial stability for the first time in my life, but my life felt bankrupt. My life was empty. All I was doing was working. I was only looking for the dollar and not for the life meaning. And it led me to change my entire life around and start basically working with things that gave me more purpose and fulfillment. And that the main one of those things was doing charity work. I started getting involved in charity work. And I wound up starting a second company, another t-shirt company that worked with charities. And that was one of the best decisions that ever happened to me because, again, what started off as a very small idea and operation led to traveling the world and getting to help people do things like provide clean water for people in Haiti and build schools in South America and things like that. And that's actually what led me to Bridget, because Bridget actually had an idea from where she was at about doing something in charity. And she gave me a call and said, "You're the only person I know that is doing anything in charity." So that's how we met. And I'll let Bridget tell the story from there.
Sure. So I'll just go into a brief backstory on me. So yeah, when Joe and I met, we like instantly felt like family because we'd both come from like humble beginnings, I would say. So I'll start there. So I grew up in Flint, Michigan. And it's a place that's like famous for like Michael Moore movies and like a water crisis. But when I was a kid, I wanted to be like famous, like in the music industry and like play guitar in a band or something like that. Like I was hardcore obsessed with music. Like that's all I cared about when I was a kid. So my whole goal was like to get out of this place. And like my entire family works for the auto industry. And like, I just wasn't interested in that, and like, good for them. But I was like, one track mind, like I'm going to get out and like become some sort of like musician or whatever. So I started doing all these jobs that were like, picking up trash at music venues and like, getting coffee at radio stations and like all of those little jobs that are like free or pay like $5 an hour. And eventually I landed a job in the mailroom at a record label in Detroit. And our office ended up getting shut down, but it was like the best thing that ever happened to me because it made me like move to LA. So I've been here ever since. I've been here for 17 years. So that was when I was 21. And that kind of like changed my entire life and trajectory, like of what was possible, because like anything is possible in Los Angeles, right? Like the craziest stuff happens here. So when I was here, I was working at Universal Music Group, and like I got to be in like the very beginning of all of these amazing careers, like Taylor Swift and The Weeknd and like The Killers and Rihanna and like all of these people that are like now superstars. And I got to see that their rise, which was amazing. And it inspired me even more. And then one day I was at my office and I saw this video of a woman hearing for the first time. And she was like the same age as me. And it just got me thinking about how important music was to my life and like where I would have been without it. And like that could have been like a very bad, future. But like instead of that, I got to like experience all these incredible things. So when I saw the video, I was like, so inspired, and I thought maybe I could give one person hearing someday. Like that would be so cool if I could just like do that. And then I got the idea to start a company that actually like funds giving hearing aids to people in need. And again, I really thought that maybe we could give like one or two people like hearing aids, but the long story short is that Joe and I started a company called Listen. And we met like right before I started the company, and I called him and I was like, I just need help starting this. And like, I don't know what to do on like these things. And I knew that he had been working in charity around the world. But yeah, long story short, we started a company called Listen. We sell headphones and speakers, and we give the proceeds to giving people hearing for the first time. And ever since 2012, we've traveled to 40 countries, and we've given over 50,000 people the gift of hearing.
That's
so
awesome.
Been a journey. And yeah, it's funny. Like it's been so cool, like such an incredible life experience. And like, we never sold the company to Apple or like became like, super wealthy or whatever, all of these like markers of quote unquote success of like a startup. But what did happen is that like we got these incredible life experiences that like no one else in the world might ever have, and it's like, so around that time, we just like started, we had like all these people reaching out to us and being like, oh my God, you guys look like you're killing it. And like, you must be like so rich. And we would just kind of laugh and be like, well, we're experiential billionaires. And that's kind of how it like dovetailed into like the name of our book and like how we started like thinking about our lives, because we were doing fine. We were like paying our bills, but we never became like, Dr. Dre Beats level. So.
But I think that starts to paint the picture though of, okay, we're focused on experiences. We're focused on a higher purpose of what's important. And I feel like now more than ever, people are searching for purpose. Like they want to have that internal fire to feel relevant, right? To feel like they're a change maker and they can do great things. And so you go down this path of start experiencing, all these adventures and things to make a difference. And then obviously putting some research behind that to find like there is power in this. So before we talk about the research and, kind of go down the path of the book, for each one of you, we'll start with you, Joe. Give us like one kind of favorite adventure that you've gone on. It can be recent, it can be past, but like what's a fun recent adventure when you talk about this level of experiences? Give us one.
Oh, I mean, there's too many to actually sort through, but I'll tell you just for instance, and all of these, I think to your point, like they all stem from doing something good, right? I think the common misconception is that it's selfish to chase your dreams and to do things that, follow your heart to try to find the experiences that matter to you. But when you do that, you become a better person. You become happier. The people around you become happier. You inspire people around you to do more things. And it all really ties back to this giving mentality that you're talking about, Jeremy. So it's really a good thing to point out. One of the things I think, there's quite a few wild ones, but at one point we were actually hiking through a volcano, basically across a volcano through the jungle after trekking to see gorillas in Rwanda. And it's something we write about in the book as well. And just to think like, Bridget and I both, we didn't go to college, I barely graduated high school, sadly. And to find ourselves there, like to have that experience was just like such a unique once in a lifetime experience. And it was so wild to be there. But the second part was we were in Rwanda because we helped give thousands of people hearing aids while we were there. So we were just, constantly having those moments where we're like, what a wild, crazy, wonderful world we're living in right now. So yeah, that was definitely a top one for me. It's hard to really top the giving part, but I'll add that in. So they're one thing.
Yeah, I was about to say, I love how they go together. So, I mean, that's part of the experiential billionaire. So, Bridget, what would you add to that one?
I mean, it's funny. It's the same, like we've done so many things on the ground with hearing, and then we'll go do something afterward. Like when we were in Peru, we went to Machu Picchu, or when we're in Kenya, we went on a safari, and like those are just epic. And like I was in Iceland and I saw the Northern Lights, and like just these huge, big bucket list things. But for me, like I think it's fun to like just remember like the smaller things that we've done that are like maybe not necessarily like bucket list, but things that only took like a day that were just so fun and like funny. And like we did, we went like dog sledding, and we like studied with these samurai masters in Japan, and we like became beekeepers in Hawaii. And like we took like trapeze lessons. Like that was awesome. I went hunting with my dad, like just like stuff like that. That's like maybe like a day-long experience that's like not expensive or not quote bucket list, but it's like so memorable. And like maybe you're learning something new, or like just getting out of your comfort zone. And like I love that stuff. Like I could do that stuff every day.
But I think you bring up some really cool things around, like when I go travel to a different office or area, you can go to lunch there and you can meet the team and go to the offices and stuff. And I'm like, let's go volunteer. Like, let's go serve, right? Because you learn the community, you meet other people, you see the heartbeat of it. And when you're around volunteers, you're around people who care. They care about community. They're going to care about you. Like you build these really strong relationships and connections, and the stories, right? Like the stories are what connects us and what we all remember of these places. And so I think that's the part that's priceless. And so talk about putting some research behind this, because you start to realize the transformational piece of this for yourselves, but there's a lot of research that then leads us into this book.
Sure. So when we first started thinking about all of this, like everything that we're doing now, it really didn't start off with a book and all that. Of course, it started off with like us kind of shifting the way that we think about wealth, and like how our experiences are actually like the real wealth of our life. Right. So we started asking like our friends and family questions, like, what were the greatest experiences of your life? Like, what are your biggest regrets? Like, what do you still want to do? What's keeping you from doing the things that you want to do? And then from there, it was so interesting, like the responses that we got, because most of the things that people say are like, free or cheap, or they're not usually like, I want to go to Antarctica. It's like, I want to do something like with my mom who lives in the next state over or something. It's like usually not a crazy thing. So we started helping people do those like small things. And then from there, we started going to like retirement homes and asking the elderly people the same questions. And then after that, we like really expanded it, and we did this big study of 20,000 people all around the world. And it was all mainly like the same questions that we've been asking our family and friends and the people in the retirement homes. And it's funny, like all of the responses are very, very similar, no matter where people live, no matter how old they are, like what, gender, race, etc. It's like everybody just values experiences, and they don't value like their monetary things or their physical goods or whatever. And it's not like we're not anti that. Like money's awesome. And so is like having nice things. But but at the end of the day, the most important thing in life is the experiences with the people that you love.
Yeah, it's what do you prioritize? What are you being intentional with the short time we have on this earth? And so, Joe, carry that into like, obviously your thoughts, but carry that into then writing the book.
Sure. Yeah, the through line to it all is that our time is our most valuable currency, right? That's the through line. It's not anti-money. It's not, I hope everybody makes as much money as they possibly can. And money helps to have like a lot of experiences, obviously. But at the end of your life, you're never going to be like on the hospital bed going, can I just see my wallet one last time, right? It's about the experiences that you have in your memory, about all the people that you connected with, the relationships you made, and all of those things happen, right, over shared experiences. And that's even more obvious when you're doing things that I think have a positive impact, to your point about that, when, we brought people down to do some school builds in Guatemala, and we did a bunch of really fun activities like cliff diving and boating and stuff while we were there. When everybody got back, all they talked about was building schools with kids. They didn't talk about the other stuff because that didn't really matter. So the book, really, it's funny because the message in the book, when we started to really, think about what the biggest value we could deliver was, it wasn't that people don't know this, people know it. And this is what the study showed. It was literally everybody, when you ask them the most valuable thing, they all listed experiences. It's that we don't act it. That's not how we act. We know it, but somehow it's like a glitch in our matrix or something where we just somehow suppress that and keep on doing like status quo and expecting it all to just work itself out. We call it like someday syndrome. We have all these goals and dreams we want to do someday, but then we never actually make any plans or take any steps toward doing any of those things. And to Bridget's point earlier, the wild thing is these aren't all the things people listed weren't like, go to Antarctica or go on safari or whatever. They were things like, start a garden or learn a language or play an instrument, things we can do. We just need to like plan it, right? So the book really became like a tool. It's told through a lot of our personal stories and then how those relate to, these types of particular instances, but it's full of exercises for people to then do to help them actually identify what is valuable to them and then take steps towards making those things a reality so that they have that sense of fulfillment and they don't have that end of life regret.
Carry it into, Bridget, on your end, like give us one, when you talk about the activation side of this, to the urgency, creating some urgency. Give us like one of your favorite tips or just the first one that pops into your head from the book.
Sure. So I think like, first of all, this is an exercise that we hope gives people like the urgency of a near-death experience without actually having a near-death experience, because the people that have those experiences are the ones that wake up and like, watch the sunrise and propose to the girl they love and like run the marathon and do all the things that they said they're going to do someday, right? Because you all know people that are like, I'll do X once I graduate or once I have kids or once I retire. And it's like, what if that never comes, right? Like that might not come. So one of the exercises that I love, that's my favorite one, is called the treasure map. And it's kind of figuring out exactly like what's important to you and like what's going to be like urgent for you to do, because at the end of your life, you're going to regret these things, right? So imagine that your doctor just called and he was like, I got some bad news. You only have 1 year left to live. And you're like, okay, so I'm going to sit down and write like 10 things or so, maybe more, that you want to do in that 1 year. But you have to really like be able to do them in 1 year. So maybe it's like, write a book, or maybe it's like, call my mom more, just stuff like that, And we always get really interesting answers. And the exercise then flows into like, what if you had 30 days? And then what if you had 24 hours, which, the 24-hour things, they're all the same. Everyone says the same things. I would spend time with my kids. I would take a walk in nature. I would, call my dad or whatever it is, but they're usually all the same. And it's like, then we tell people, why aren't those things on your list today? Like, why don't you do that right now? If that's the most important thing to you in your life, like you should do that today. And then B, we have them go through all 3 lists and then circle the things that they're currently working on. And the sad thing is usually people say 0 or 1 of those things out of like 30 things on the list. So these are the things that people would do with 1 year left, and they're not doing any of them currently. So we're trying to give people that urgency of like, okay, take some of those things that you wrote down and like make actual plans, like put it on your calendar, like stop saying you'll do it someday, because like someday might never come, right?
Yeah. Joe, what would you add to that?
It's just really trying to, tell people again what they already know, which is this is what everybody regrets, at the end of, life or even maybe during, obviously life, and something changes dramatically and you're no longer able to perhaps do some of the things that you thought you would have been able to do. You're going to go, why didn't I do that thing that mattered so much? And what I'll add to what Bridget said is the reasons were also so simple. It was the same things. It was, I never got around to it. I was afraid. I, just didn't have the time or the money. And those are things that you can actually overcome, right? So people just, use those as an excuse to not start taking any steps. But what we find is that when people actually start putting those things on their actual calendar instead of in this like vague someday that never is going to happen, those things magically start to happen, right? Those things actually come to fruition. And as soon as people start to do one or two things and they see that they can take those someday things and put them on their actual calendar and make them happen, they get the confidence and the momentum to keep taking action and keep doing things. And again, that's an inspirational, it's a ripple effect. The people around you, they start to go, wow, how did Bridget run a marathon? I didn't even know she could run. And I'm not sure Bridget could run a marathon, to be honest.
I mean, I actually did one race last year because it was on my list of like, I'm gonna try this someday. And then I tried it and I was like, I'm good. Like, I don't need to do that anymore. But I'm glad that I did, right? I'm happy that I did, but I should stop the list.
And there's probably a handful of people or more that she inspired. I actually accidentally started like a impromptu soccer league in my area by playing soccer with a few friends on one weekend, because we were like, how come we just don't start our own little league and start playing? We played, it was 6 of us one weekend. The next weekend there was 12. The next weekend there was 20. The next weekend there was like 50, and it had to break into like multiple places. And it got so good I couldn't play anymore. I wasn't good enough. There's a bunch of people that were way too good. I was like, well, that was fun. But the point is, like, just we're all waiting for somebody to do something, and then it turns out we can be the one. We can start. We can just take action and do it. And then, you know, who knows what'll happen.
I love it. This is one of those conversations we could have that goes on forever, but talk about you two being guest speakers, talk about where we can go to follow your efforts. How can we get the book? So give us a little bit of, how can we kind of carry this conversation forward?
Sure. So we each have our own individual keynotes about making someday today. So it's all about finding that urgency in helping people overcome those like roadblocks and like in their life and in their work, like in both things have big goals, right? So how do you accomplish those big goals instead of like pushing it off to someday? So, and then we also do these like half day and full day workshops with companies, with universities, all kinds of clients, but it's just been like the most fun and like amazing experience. I've been loving it. And yeah, you can find us on Joe's site is joehuff.com and mine is bridgethilton.com. And we have a bunch of free tools on our book website, which is experientialbillionaire.com.
Well, once again, everyone, the book is Experiential Billionaire, Build a Life Rich in Experiences and Die with No Regrets. So Joe Huff, Bridget Hilton, thank you for all you do. Thank you for sharing all the amazing adventures and talking about the book. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Higginbotham Insurance and Financial Services is proud to power the City Current Show. We're a people-first company that protects what matters most, the families, businesses, and trailblazers that keep our community going. As one of the nation's top independent insurance firms, Higginbotham is a single-source solution for business insurance, employee benefits, HR services, and personal insurance that's customized for you. We're here to serve you, the people you care about, and your community. Call 866-377-1959 or visit higginbotham.com.